Hello, everyone. This is SomerSand with Johan Sommers and Maggie Sand, and this is our 14th episode of Chats About Improv. And today we have our very special guest, Nick Maass, who's going to talk to us about, hey Nick, about Improvised Murder Mystery.
It's so cool you're with us, Nick. Many thanks for joining us. And
thanks for having me.
And before we start with Murder Mysteries, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm from Germany. I've been living in Bielefeld for the last 10 years. I moved here to go to university to become a teacher. I wanted to teach English and history. And then I realized that there's a lot of theater you can do at a university. Started doing theater in a bunch of groups, and one of them was an improv group. And that was most fun out of all the theater stuff I was doing. And then I started on the side next to university to become a theater teacher. And I decided I don't want to go to school and teach English or history, but I want to do theater. And that's what I've been doing since then, basically. And because improv was most exciting for me, that's what I did mostly. I performed in a lot of different ensembles before the pandemic happened, and started exploring the international spaces, and was invited to my first festival as a teacher right when the pandemic hit and the festival had to be cancelled in Vancouver, which I then got to teach at with my colleague Lena Breuer online. But it didn't feel the same as going to Vancouver, of course. During the pandemic, also Lena, me, and some other improvisers from Germany and Austria formed the Improfest online, where we organized a festival at the beginning twice a week. It had 5 to 6 workshops with teachers from all around the world. Just staying sane during the pandemic, and that has been our main thing for the last 2 years, improv-wise.
I remember the online festivals you've done. I think I joined a few times in the very early stages of the pandemic. It was so cool.
And of course, we both joined Nick's workshop in Oslo. Oslo Festival.
Yes.
The short notice improv festival.
That workshop was Murder Mystery. The topic of today. So, Nick, could you tell us a little bit about murder mysteries in improv?
It just like any other genre, it can be a genre show. Like if you're doing an improvised Western, you pick up on tropes and things from that genre, and then you perform a show. And I guess because it's improv, it's usually like a little bit of a parody, but also still like you're taking the thing serious. But with murder mystery, the great thing is that you can go beyond just reproducing the genre, and you can actually have that element of investigation, of not knowing who did it, trying to find out, not just on the character level, but also on the performer level. So if you, at the beginning of the show, or at some point at the beginning of the show, decide who is the murderer, and that person knows, but there's other people who don't know, like the entire rest of the ensemble, for example, or just the detective, then it's not just the character trying to find it out, but also the performer. And that just adds completely another layer to it. And the audience can also, in the shows that I perform, usually the audience can choose whether they want to know or not know. Like in a Columbo, you know at the beginning who did it. If it's an Agatha Christie, you don't know. And some people like either of those. I think that's why improvising murder mystery makes so much sense, because you can have that meta game with the audience and your fellow performers. And I think that's probably the reason why a lot of groups in Germany started improvising murder mystery. Because, I mean, murder mystery is a huge thing on German television. but I think it's also just something that makes sense to improvise.
Nick, you say that sometimes it's the audience who chooses the who did it, or who's going to die, or both. Yeah? Yeah. What method do you use for the audience to choose it and the other improvisers don't know about it if they're already in the same room and the same stage?
Well, it's basically just simple logistics. I've seen two ways of doing it. One is you give an audience member pieces of paper that say, you did it, you didn't do it, you didn't do it, you didn't do it, and then they look at them and pass them out to the players. Another one that I like is when we play it in a restaurant. There's one murder mystery format that we play at in a restaurant as a dinner theater kind of thing. And there we just form a circle standing with our backs to each other, and an audience member walks into the middle, touches one of us on the shoulder, and then the host says something like, okay, now we're going to see if that worked, and one person raises their hand to show that it worked, while everybody's closing their eyes. So I guess there's some level of trust for the audience to trust you that you're actually picking in that moment and not have some sort of thing where you tell each other, especially if you're doing an intermission. I don't talk to my fellow players about who's the murderer, but the audience doesn't know that necessarily.
Yeah. You said something interesting. You do these shows also in a restaurant, some sort of dinner murder mystery, which is very new, I guess, for many people. What's that exactly? Why in a restaurant? What's happening?
Well, I think there's a lot of theater stuff happening in restaurants, but it's usually scripted. Mm-hmm. And basically, people come, pay a lot of money for very good food, and then after each course, they get a little bit of theater. And when we do it, we go and sit at the tables, at least pre-pandemic. Now we're skipping that part. Sit at the tables with the people in character at the beginning in groups of 2, and there's 4 people playing the show. And when the audience comes in, they assume that we are just regular guests because, like everybody else, we could have just bought tickets. And we don't talk very much so that we don't show that we're characters or anything. And then we just say, hey, I'm going to go check the car. Or, I have to go pee, something like that, and leave. And the 4th person that leaves out of the ensemble gets shot when they're leaving the room. And then there's a little bit of hosting and moderating, explaining the whole format. And the audience gives us characters. And then we just play a murder mystery in the restaurant and sit back down at the tables. But now we're in character, and we stay in character for the whole show. And the audience gets to just talk to us while eating. And we try to stick to the reality of it. Yeah, this murder happened here in the restaurant. The police said they can't be here for another 3 hours, so we can't leave, I guess.
And in the meantime, you have a great meal as well.
Yes. Oh, some of those restaurants. Amazing.
It's a very intriguing format, I say.
Yeah. How long does it take average, the full play?
Well, the playing itself, because during in between 2 courses, we get up on something like a stage and have about 20-25 minutes interaction with each other, where we play scenes, flashbacks, things like that. And that happens 3 times. So basically, it's a 1-hour play. But in between, we sit down at the table, talk to the people, and then I guess it's probably 2.5, 3 hours.
3 hours, okay.
What do you think is the ideal size of a troupe playing a murder mystery?
I don't think I've ever seen any group doing it with more than 4 people or less than 4 people. It's usually, I know a lot of groups do it with 4, because then you have 4 characters at the beginning, you kill one of them, and then you need a new character because someone has to investigate the murder. So the performer who played the victim can then become a detective, a police officer, whatever. and the other 3 can stay their characters. And 3 suspects is just a really good number, I think, because if you have 2, it's kind of too little, I guess. Mm-hmm. And if you have 4, it takes a lot of time to actually flesh out those 4 characters. Yeah. So I think 4 is amazing.
Okay. What do you think are the biggest pitfalls for an ensemble doing a murder mystery?
I think it can be very heady. Like if you establish characters and their backstory and then motives and evidence, like keeping all that in your head and trying to keep those different lines of the plots apart and then bringing them together can just be really, really heady.
Yeah.
And then I think if you do that part badly, then at the end it's just people standing there desperately trying to remember stuff or just ignoring all the stuff that happened and making up new stuff. So I think I don't know if that's a pitfall or just a challenge to really listen and really pay attention to things and then not forget the emotional side of it and making it a head game thing.
Sure. And what happens if the person playing the detective decides that the murderer is the wrong person? What happens there?
Well, I think there's 2 approaches you could take. One is you try for the detective to guess the right person in every show. Like if that's your goal, then I think you're destroying the game because everybody then has to make sure that the detective finds the right person. So I personally haven't done that in a way that felt good. So I would go the opposite direction and say, okay, the detective, maybe he finds out, maybe he doesn't, but then we need something to give the audience the feeling of closure, something of, okay, now we tell you who actually did it.
Oh.
And I would say there's different ways to do that. You could just tell the audience, okay, now the show is over, but let's see who actually killed it. And then a lot of groups work with envelopes where they like put in, okay, this person is guilty, this person's not guilty. Like you write the name of the character on the envelope and put the pieces of paper in there, something like that. And then you give it to an audience member and they give it back at the end of the show and you check. But you can also just find a scenic way to do it. So we always end with a monologue by the guilty person in freedom or in jail or being arrested.
And they give us the reason why they did it. Yeah.
So the trick is that the 3 suspects, if you have an ensemble of 4, that the 3 suspects are all equally suspect, all have motives to do the murder. It's not that, for example, one person knows, oh, I'm the murderer, I will make myself so much more guilty or suspicious, and the other 2 would not do that.
Yeah, I would say basically all 3 should be great suspects.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you do it early on, making yourself look really, really guilty, and the other ones make themselves look really not guilty, then you lose all the suspense. Then it's not a question of who did it anymore for the audience. So I think trying to keep it it could be anyone for the longest possible time is good, I think.
Yeah, you need to make it as difficult as possible so that the audience is still interested. Yes.
Yeah, and also I think it's like making yourself look guilty, even if you're innocent, I think is great training for other improv stuff where people don't want to lose in a scene and don't want to look bad. And murder mystery just gives us the license to play evil characters, to play characters who are guilty and make ourselves look bad.
Yeah. And I think when you do that and you make yourself look guilty, something is happening in the scene as well. Yeah, there are things on stake and challenges there, and that might be and is definitely good for any type of improv scene.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, exactly. The stakes are so high in murder mystery. Or at least if it works. I mean, you could theoretically play a murder mystery and nobody cares that someone was killed, but that's very counterintuitive.
So you do and organize workshops, murder mystery?
Yes, sometimes. Yeah, basically, anybody can invite me, and I will come anywhere and teach a murder mystery workshop. But I'm also teaching at a festival in about a month at the Irreverente, that probably was terrible Portuguese, in Lisbon. But I think the workshop is already sold out. So, yeah, I don't know. Find me on Facebook and I'll let you know where I'm teaching murder mystery.
And it is in English, or could it be in German as well?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Sadly, those are the two only languages that I can.
That's enough.
Okay.
Maybe a question for you. What did you like about improvising murder mystery? Because you seem to like it.
Yeah, it's a good format, easy to follow, and you have so much possibilities to be spontaneous in all the scenes. The suspects can play different characters as well at a certain point in time, so it really works.
And from the audience point of view, that an audience that is not used to going to seeing improvised shows, even for an audience that is only used to seeing script theater, it's an introduction for them to watch improvisers, because it's a format that they are already familiar with, like you say, Agatha Christie and all these Miss Marvel and everything else. It's a way to introduce the world to improvised theater.
Yeah, the audience understands what a murder mystery show is, but explaining a herald might be more difficult.
I just face it, people just love murder mysteries. I mean, if you switch on television, there's one murder after the other, and detectives and detective series. It's something people like to see and watch. So it's great to see it improvised.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you very much, Nick, for joining us on our episode 14 of Chats About Improv with the subject Improvised Mystery Murder. We'll see you soon. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.